Hey you guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking springtime chatterbait fishing. One of my favorite ways to catch big bass this time of year. Chatterbaits are an amazing way to catch springtime bass. They just plain work, and not just on little bass. They will catch absolute giants. The chatterbait just has that something special. It has that triggering effect on bass when they're moving up in the pre-spawn, headed towards the spawn, and they want to feed. Now, you can go down this rabbit hole with chatterbaits, bladed jigs, whatever you want to call them. The rabbit hole is deep. Like, I'm out on the road right now on a road trip. In my boat, just chatterbaits. We have 3 full boxes of chatterbaits, different styles, colors, weights. We also have 5 bags of trailers. Seriously, 5 bags of trailers just for one road trip. Now, granted, I'm down in Florida at the moment, and one of my favorite things to do down here is throw the chatterbait. But the point is, you can go so far down a rabbit hole with this stuff. It's mind-boggling. You can go broke on trailers or chatterbaits. Today, we're going to do the opposite. Today, we are going simple. I want to narrow this thing down for you so that you can fish with confidence this spring. The bladed jig is such an effective way to catch them. Whether you've got clear water or murky water, all that I do differently between those two things is adjust color and sometimes adjust my size. Now, we're going to talk about 5 different chatterbaits and a handful of trailers, but we're going to talk about them really quickly, and then we're going to narrow it all the way down, and I'm going to focus in on 2 chatterbaits and just a couple of trailers. Now, some of these things will apply if you're an outlier. If you live in a part of the country where the water's really tannic, so like tea-colored, really stained, or you've got muddy water, or you know you're in a highland reservoir, crystal clear water. If you know you're at one of those ends of the spectrums, then some of the outliers are the things for you. But for most of you, we're going to narrow it right down to the core, just a couple of baits, and that's based on budget, and then just a couple of trailers. We're really going to keep it that easy. Now, to kick it off, let's talk about just one, okay? For the guy who doesn't want to listen to a whole video, if you could only have one, forget budget, forget everything else. If you could only have one chatterbait, it's the one that I'm throwing right now. It's tied on my rod. This is the jackhammer, okay? Specifically, I'm throwing that jackhammer in the 1/2 ounce green pumpkin shad. And then on the back of that, this is a Hog Farmer spunk shad in sexy shad. That's the color. And in the video description, like every video, we link everything we're going to talk about, from rods and reels to baits to specific colors, weights, all that stuff. But at the very top of that list will be that chatterbait with that trailer. Now, this is a 5.5. I'm actually going to link the 4.5 if you could only have one. Because again, some guys are in fisheries with bigger fish, some guys are in fisheries with smaller fish. So if you had to just have one, it's that exact combo, but with the trailer in a 4.5, so just slightly smaller than this one. Now, with that said, let's quickly talk through the different styles of chatterbait and what they're for. Okay, now I primarily, just flat out, I primarily throw the Z-Man chatterbaits, the actual like Chatterbait brand chatterbaits. There's a lot of other baits on the market, but I stick with these because of the connection to the head and their incredible startup speed. The average guy doesn't even know what I'm talking about. But when I throw chatterbaits around cover, usually I'm fishing targets. I'm throwing right up on a grass edge here. And the second I hit the water, I need that blade vibrating. I need it to look perfect from moment 1 because I'm right there in my strike zone. And the longer it takes to start up, the farther from that strike zone I'm getting. A lot of the bladed jigs on the market were designed to get around Z-Man's patent. A lot of them have slower startups, which means it hits the water. I go to pull it, it's not quite vibrating. I've got to snap the rod to get the blades started. I think back to when I was a little kid trout fishing. I'd throw inline spinners, I'd throw them out, and you'd have to pump the rod to get that spinner started. Same exact thing. You've got to work it to get it working properly. And then if you go too slow, they stop vibrating, you got to rip them again. That doesn't work for me. I want to hit the water and be vibrating so I have the perfect presentation right when I'm closest to where I think those fish are. That's why I throw these specific chatterbaits. Now, the first one, the jackhammer. We just talked about that. The jackhammer is a pricey chatterbait. It's all premium components, amazing hook, amazing snap, startup speed is incredible. Like that is the gold standard. That's the one. But there is a new one. This is the Evo. This one came out last year. The Evo is extremely similar, but a lot less money. And it comes with some amazing colors that aren't in the jackhammer. So they're an amazing 1-2 punch. Then we've got this guy, the little guy, the Mini Max. Okay, it's just downsized. Look at it compared to a standard jackhammer. We've got smaller blade, much smaller hook. Okay, it's just a downsized presentation. Two more for you. We've got this guy. He's called the cross eyes. You can see his crossed eyes there on the head. This one, if I pull the skirt out of the way, it's got these two wire keepers in here. Very different than all the others. That's a weed guard. It's not really a weed guard though. It's a wood guard. If you are fishing around a lot of laydowns, limbs, standing timber, this one can't be beat. If you're not fishing around a bunch of wood, you don't need that one. So again, I want today to be simple. I'm going to show you the 5, then we'll narrow it back down really quick. The last one is this little guy right here with the clear blade, the stealth blade. So with that being number 5, let's talk about this one's purpose. We'll run back through them real quick. The standard is going to be the jackhammer. That's my number 1. But if there's tons of other people throwing chatterbaits, because once that bite is fired up, people know it. Sometimes where I live, I'll come around a corner, there'll be 4 other boats and all of them are throwing chatterbaits. It's crazy. If I find myself in that situation, I instantly go to the stealth blade. Smaller, clear blade. And I don't care if the water's muddy or clear, this thing will work. It is the most overlooked of all the chatterbaits, and I've done so much damage with it. The key here is it's a tighter vibration, and obviously with that clear blade, if you're in a clear water situation, it's a more natural presentation. But the big thing for me, ignore all that, is that it's different and it's subtle. So if everybody's throwing a chatterbait, I instantly go here. If they're not, I stay with that jackhammer. We already talked about this guy, the cross eyes. I throw that when I'm fishing around wood, period. That's where that one shines for me. The Mini Max. The Mini Max, I'm going to turn to when I'm fishing ponds, when I'm fishing bluegill fisheries, but I'm fishing really, really shallow. And then I also turn to it in the fall. Now, we're talking spring right now, but in the fall, when those bait fish are small, that thing is deadly. The key to the Mini Max is that it's small, but the hook is still super stout. That's an amazing hook, and it will not bend out even on a giant bass. So with that, we've brought it all the way back to 2. Okay, the 2 being the jackhammer and that new Evo. It's really going to come down to price point here. If you've got the budget, the answer is go jackhammer. I still mostly throw the jackhammer. If you need to save a little bit of money, the Evo is still amazing. Almost identical hook shape. The blades are super cool. It comes in a bunch of unique colors, like that one right there that you cannot get in a jackhammer. Okay, and then the blades also have like an epoxy coating on them. So that's not a sticker on there. That's actual glitter on the blade, and then it's sealed onto it. So super durable. I've been very, very impressed with these as I've played with them. But still, for me, my bread and butter is a jackhammer. Now, we're going to get to trailers here in a second. But hopefully that narrowed it down. Again, 2 baits, and it really comes down to your budget. Okay, let's just leave it there unless you're one of those outliers. When it comes to trailer, I've got 4 main trailers that I throw, but 90+% of the time, I'm throwing 1 trailer. And the only thing I'm changing is color, okay? That's going to be a spunk shad. No surprise if you've ever heard us talk about chatterbait fishing before. The spunk shad is what you see on all 3 of these. Now, this is a 4.5, this is a 4.5, the one in the middle is a 5.5, okay? It's just larger. The spunk shad is my #1 bait because when you put it on the back of a chatterbait, the thing goes wild. On a straight retrieve, because again, a chatterbait's effectiveness is in your ability to cover water, locate fish, and then trigger them to bite. So sometimes I'm just fan casting my chatterbait, and it's mostly a straight retrieve. If I haven't been bit this morning, I'm just covering water and just occasionally twitching it once in a while. Listen closely to this. This is an important detail. The moment I get a bite, because in the springtime, bass are typically schooled up together. The moment I get a bite, I start getting much more erratic with that chatterbait, meaning I'm winding it, popping the rod, twitching it, popping my reel handle, and I start getting that bait to dance in the water. If you're using one of these other trailers we're going to talk about, basically they just do more of like a start and stop in the water. But because the spunk shad is round, it allows that chatterbait, when you start reel popping, it'll dance and dart and dive and roll, and that tail's just back there going crazy, and the bait comes to life in ways that I just don't see with other trailers. That's why I throw it so much. So the moment I know I'm around fish, the moment I get that first bite, I start dancing and popping and working that chatterbait. Now, I already said the #1, if I could only have one, is that sexy shad color, okay? But these 3 are unique color situations that I want to talk through before we even get to the bulk of the trailers. 3 situations. Let's start here. And the reason why is that I caught an 11-pounder on this exact setup last year. This color scheme, where I've got that chartreuse and that green pumpkin, that's a perfect pairing to that chatterbait right there. Perfect pairing. A lot of times people want to throw really natural colors. A lot of guys will throw white, and then a lot of guys will throw really ghosty. And by a lot of guys, I really mean me. I mean, I throw tons of this stuff. But unique situation #1. If you are on a fishery where you don't think anyone else is throwing a chatterbait, or you just plain know there's not a lot of pressure. Like this lake I'm on today gets a lot of pressure, but today I'm the only boat that I've seen. Nobody else is out here. It's crazy. Granted, it's the middle of the week, but there's no one here. When you're in this situation, that's prime time to go to the chartreuse. Just a little bit on color theory here. Bass love to eat. They're aggressive, they're predators, and they're good at it. If fish are pressured, they get much more sensitive, much more careful, and getting those perfect, shad type imitators in a lot of fisheries become critical. But if they're not pressured, typically it's a competition amongst the bass to get to the food first. Chartreuse is one of those special colors because bass can see it from a distance. And if you're on a lake where they're not just getting abused, I'm telling you right now, some of your biggest bites you will ever get will come on that bright, bold chartreuse. Here's one that's just a little more subtle, but very, very similar. It's all about the fish seeing it and getting to it. Those big fish, oftentimes in the spring, they move up to feed, but there's already buck males up there. And those little bucks, those 1 and 2 pound males, they're super aggressive and they are fast, man. It's not always easy for an 8, 9, 10, 11 pound female full of eggs to speed up and get something, right? Those bucks will beat them to it. It's not that they didn't want to feed, it's that they didn't get there first. The brighter and bolder that you go, the more likely that that fish can spot that thing and ramp up and catch it. It's amazing how many big ones I catch on that setup. So that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, fire craw. That bright, bold, obnoxious. This is a springtime thing, and we talk about it every spring. The red, the oranges, it's a real thing. Bass in the spring love to eat crawfish, but even in places where I don't see bright crawfish, like in places where I know the crawfish that I've seen are like green pumpkin type colors or tan colors, this still works in the spring. There's just a special window, especially if the water's murky, okay? From murky to downright muddy, this can just fire them up, and it's always worth having around. And a lot of times in the spring, that color is just sold out everywhere. Last scenario, one of the primary colors that you're going to see people throw around the country is black blue, especially in the South, especially in that tannic tea-colored water. But a lot of people throw black and blue. Something that I do is I like to soften it up. So this isn't black blue. This is bruised green pumpkin, okay? Bruised green pumpkin is a black blue top with a green pumpkin bottom. And then the trailer that I put on there, this is a Missile Baits spunk shad. So the spunk shad is made by Hog Farmer, but Missile has also licensed it. So they have some unique colors in the spunk shad too, exact same bait. In the Missile colors, that's Super Bug, half black blue, half green pumpkin. It fits that exact same color profile. I throw it in the same scenarios. It just softens up that black blue and it looks a little bit different than everybody else. And I've done so much damage on that color right there. So those are sort of the outliers. I also talked about a lot of times when I throw that Evo, that it's because of unique colors. Here's 2 of those examples right there. Just super cool colors that just aren't offered in the jackhammer. Now, let's get back to the core of this thing. There's a handful of trailers. The main one, again, is that spunk shad. Hog Farmer, you know, you've got Hematoma, an amazing black and blue option. Electric Shad, one of my all-time favorite natural colors. There's that green pumpkin chartreuse we were just talking about. In Missile, you know, Lava Craw, Bruiser Flash, like a true bright, bold black blue. And then there's that Super Bug again that we just talked about. So in the spunk shad, you've got a lot of color options, especially between the 2 brands. And literally, it's the same bait, either way. I'm throwing either the 4.5 or the 5.5. Most people throw the 4.5. I throw the 5.5 first, always. I only go to the 4.5 if I have to get bit. The 5.5, because it's stretched out, the tail's longer, it has even more action. It dances even more than the 4.5 does, but that 4.5 still dances better than everything else. So you got 2 sizes to choose from, and then a plethora of colors between the 2 brands. In the video description, I'll give you like my top 2 or 3 favorite colors from each brand. I'll give you like a really natural one, a bold one, and a dark one. How about that? Now, outside of those, there's a handful of trailers that we rely on because you don't always need to be super erratic, and we're not always imitating shad. Ooh, we've got a breeze starting up here. It feels really good. Hopefully it's not making too much noise in the camera. Sometimes you like to throw a swim bait trailer. We've spent tons of time shooting underwater footage of chatterbait trailers. There's also a bunch of new trailers that have come to market, so we're probably going to do that again this year, try all those new trailers and see if anything has changed. But in the meantime, hands down, my favorite swim bait trailer from Yamamoto is that Swimmin' Zocco. And it just comes down to action. It's no personal preference. We just film them underwater, analyze that footage, and the baits that stand out are clear. So that Swimmin' Zocco, the one that has a paddle tail on it. The standard Zocco does not have a paddle tail, flat tail. The paddle tail is the one that I like the most. That's my favorite swim bait type trailer. My favorite trailer in like a bluegill type situation, so more of a profile trailer, is the Big Bite Baits, the Kamikaze Swim On. See how it's a flat tail, and then from the side profile you can see that it's two appendages. The cool thing about this trailer, for me, when I'm imitating bluegill, this is instantly the trailer that I go to. That Swimmin' Zocco is another good option, but this is where I start. The cool thing about the Kamikaze is that when I'm fishing this thing on a steady retrieve, those two tails will get going separate of one another, and the way it looks underwater is just a dream. It's awesome. It's just a great profile. You pair that up, you know, you do it in like a black and blue, or you do it in like a green pumpkin chartreuse or a green pumpkin with orange flake. You've got a fantastic bluegill and panfish imitator. And then the last one, sometimes I want to imitate a craw. I don't do it as much, but I do it every spring. And hands down, my favorite one for that is the NetBait Pack-A-Slim, specifically the 4-inch. Okay, not the smaller one, it's the 4-inch. That is the one. Just trust me on that. The cool thing, there's a lot of craw profiles on the market. The reason this one is my favorite is that when we're throwing that thing, we've watched so much underwater footage. Again, the thing about this bait is you'll be on a straight retrieve and those claws are back there kicking like they're supposed to. And for no reason, one of those claws will just let loose and just go crazy and then come back in. So they'll be doing their standard kick and then just off it goes. And it just adds its own cadence break, its own change in retrieve, even when you're doing nothing. And if you should know from fishing spinnerbaits, crankbaits, a lot of other baits, those little changes in cadence are what get bit. That's why we fish the spunk shad so much. We're working and popping and dancing. That's what gets bit. So a bait that you can slow roll along the bottom, because that's what I like to do with a craw profile, fish it right on bottom, and it starts doing unique stuff on its own, that's the deal. So again, just 4 trailers for you. The only random exception is going to be that Mini Max. Obviously, it needs its own trailer because it's so much smaller than the others. The 2 that I throw there, very similar to standard Zocco. And the reason why is that because the downsized profile, this little Mini Max dances that Zocco tail completely different than the bigger chatterbaits do. So in the tiny Zocco, the little guy, I really like that. And then same deal, that Kamikaze Swim On, but in the smaller 3.75 size. Those are the 2 I like with that Mini Max. But everything else, I'm always going to start with the spunk shad, and then I've got those 3 others. We've got that Swimmin' Zocco, the paddle tail. We've got that Kamikaze Swim On, and then we've got that Pack-A-Slim craw. But if you're just choosing one, it's a spunk shad, either a 4.5 or a 5.5, and then again, one of those 2 chatterbaits, either a jackhammer or that new Evo. That simple. So in the video description, I'll link all that stuff for you. I know I talked about a lot of baits, a lot of different situations, but it really does narrow down. So I'll list them in the description, but you know the ones that are most important to me. You know my favorite trailers. You know a couple of those unique situations, if those applied to you. And then the other thing is rods. No budget, just favorite rod for this situation. G Loomis, the IMX Pro, the 883C BJR. BJR stands for Bladed Jig Rod. I fish that with a Metanium. You can also fish that if you want to save a little bit of money. The Corrado 70 MGL is fantastic for fishing a chatterbait as well. You get great distance out of both of those reels, but that bladed jig rod is a dream. I like to fish it braid to leader, typically 40-pound braid, and then just depending on situation, anything from like 12 to 20-pound leader, depending on what I'm around for cover. Two other rods. In this situation, fields of cover, big fish, heavy cover, a rod that you would never think to try, but I've done so much damage with it. From Megabass in the Levante series, the Braillist. In the Levante, it's a little bit more moderate through the mid than it is in the Orochi XX. So the Levante Braillist loads up great. Now, this is not a rod that I would be fishing in a Highland reservoir. It's not even the rod I use on the Tennessee River system, even though I'm around big fish. This is the rod I turn to in heavy cover. I trust this thing to get giant fish out of that heavy cover, period. It just works. And then again, there it is with that Corrado 70. Then last but not least, for a guy who wants a crossover rod that can do a lot of different things, we stumbled on this one because I never would have guessed that this would be a great rod for throwing a chatterbait. But that 11-pounder I caught on this setup last year, I was actually on a Zodius. This is the Shimano X Pride, 610 medium heavy. That's a rod that we use for a lot of things. I throw finesse jigs on that rod. I do a lot of things with that rod. So some of you probably already own it. It's a great crossover chatterbait rod, and I was shocked when I found that out. Now, the X Pride I have paired up to an Aldebaran, but the Zodius, the one step down, I typically pair up to that same Corrado 70, and it's awesome. But this is a sneaky little rod because it's super light in the hand. You can really flip and pitch around docks, things like that. But when a giant eats it and you really load it up and you get down through the mid of that rod, there's some serious backbone there that you don't expect, and it will plant that hook and you can get those fish. Works remarkably well. All right, guys, with that, we are going to wrap it up. Again, everything's in that video description for you, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, our website, no matter where you see it, in that video description, you just have to find it. You might have to go down and click the 3 little dots. You might have to go down, click more, scroll down, click more again. Or on some of the platforms, you just scroll down and it's all there for you. But we've got all that stuff linked just to make it easy for you. Go out there, fish with confidence. The bladed jig can be deadly year-round, but the peak is this pre-spawn period. This is the peak of that bite around the country, and you can catch a lot of fish, but you can catch giant bass. You can use it to cover water, find schools of fish, and then you can use it to dissect those schools and pull the biggest fish out as well. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.